The necklace wasn't just a necklace, it was a legend, a whispered ghost of Princess Diana's elegance, hidden from the world for decades. But it didn't just resurface, no, it fell. Literally, crashed out of a painting, landing on a marble floor with the kind of sound that silences a room. That sound echoed far beyond Laura's private gallery. It was the sound of a dynasty cracking. The room had been pristine, crystal chandeliers, polished gold trim, an eerie silence that made every footstep feel like a scream. Laura stood in the center, arms crossed, watching a young transporter named James with a glare that could melt steel. The painting of her younger self, eyes bright, smile frozen, was being repositioned. But then came the slip, the crash, the tear. The necklace fell out like it had been waiting. James didn't even fully understand what he was looking at, but Laura did. Her face went ghost white as the blue sapphire winked at her from the floor. She snatched it up like it was poison and tucked it into her coat before he could speak. "You saw nothing," she whispered, and that was it. The cover-up had begun. Except it wasn't just James watching. Sir Edward, a shadow in the corners of the palace, saw everything. He didn't flinch, didn't gasp, didn't move until Laura turned away. And then he disappeared, straight into the heart of Kensington Palace, where Prince William waited, quiet, calculating, and dangerous. Now, William had never trusted Camilla. That was no secret. But this hit differently. This wasn't about the petty politics of royal status. This was about his mother, Diana's legacy, her memory, her jewels. And the woman who had tried to replace her, Camilla, was at the center of it all. Sir Edward recounted everything with surgical precision. William didn't speak for a long time. He just stared at an old photo on his desk. His mother in a green dress, smiling softly. And then he said, "Tell no one," because William wasn't going to throw a tantrum. He was going to play chess. The first piece he moved was Eleanor, an ex-Times journalist with a flair for whispers. William didn't need headlines. He needed rumors, just enough to stir curiosity, just enough to make Camilla sweat. "Leak the idea that Diana's jewels are missing," he said. "Let the world start asking questions." At the same time, he activated Marcus, a former MI5 operative who knew how to dig without leaving footprints. Track everything tied to Camilla, every shipment, every gallery, every truck. Marcus disappeared into the mist of London, and within days he returned with fire. What he found was more than William expected. It wasn't just the necklace. Camilla had moved dozens of items over the last 3 years. Rare pieces, personal belongings of Diana, all under the guise of art exhibitions. But the paperwork didn't add up. The trucks left at night, the names and the records didn't exist. Marcus used one word to describe it: system. William froze when he heard that. A system. That meant intent. That meant planning. That meant Camilla hadn't just crossed a line, she danced over it with her daughter by her side. Meanwhile, at Clarence's house, Camilla tried to hold it together, but behind closed doors, she was a storm. She berated Laura, calling her careless, naive, weak. Laura, still shaken, realized for the first time what her mother truly was. This wasn't about art. This wasn't about honor. It was about revenge. And now it was personal. Because William had the evidence. And he wasn't just going to confront Camilla, he was going to dismantle her. Quietly, surgically, completely. The necklace was just the beginning. The van rolled into Dover under cover of fog, headlights cutting through the dense mist like blades. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, earpiece in, eyes locked on the rearview mirror. "Target is close," he muttered. In the back of the vehicle, 2 men dressed like dock workers double-checked their gear. Phones ready, cameras hidden, everything set. They weren't just chasing stolen jewels, they were about to snatch proof of betrayal from the Queen herself. A black sedan crept up slowly near Warehouse 9. A man stepped out, coat pulled up against the chill, carrying a slim box under one arm. He didn't look like royalty. He looked like someone with secrets to sell. The buyer arrived minutes later. No words exchanged, just the silent pass of the box from one hand to the other. Marcus gave the signal. It happened fast. Flashlights, shouts, running feet. Before the buyer could even blink, he was pinned against the side of the van. Marcus yanked open the box, and there it was, the pearl bracelet, pristine, gleaming in the light, delicate, and damning. Another one of Diana's treasures. Back at Kensington, William studied the photos on his desk. The sapphire necklace had rattled him, but this sealed it. There was no excuse now. No possibility of misunderstanding. Camilla had orchestrated the quiet disappearance of his mother's belongings like a queen planning a heist. He stood, stared out the tall windows, and made a decision. At exactly 2 p.m., the royal council gathered, aged men and women dressed in history and pride. The walls of the chamber were lined with oil paintings and gold-trimmed molding, but the air felt heavy, the kind of weight that comes before a storm. William entered first. Camilla followed. She walked in with her head high, her face blank. Her dress was flawless, pearls around her neck, but her eyes were restless. She knew something was coming, but not how hard it would hit. Charles sat at the head of the table, unsure whether to defend his wife or his son, torn between loyalty and truth. William didn't waste time. He placed the evidence on the table with a quiet thud. A folder, a photo, a name. And then he opened the box and revealed the necklace, the very same sapphire piece everyone thought was lost in time. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He just looked at Camilla and asked, "Would you like to explain this?" The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. Camilla's breath caught. For the first time in her royal life, her words failed her. That necklace, she stammered, was being held for preservation? William raised an eyebrow. In your daughter's private gallery? Hidden inside a painting? Is that standard royal protocol now? Gasps echoed around the table. Charles's hands gripped the arms of his chair. "Camilla," he said quietly, "is this true?" She looked at him, eyes wide, mouth trembling. "I did it for us. For the family, for what I endured." William slammed the bracelet down beside the necklace. "No! You did this for yourself." No one spoke after that. Camilla's mask crumbled right there in front of the council, right in front of her husband, the king. And in that moment, the whispers turned to voices. The evidence was undeniable. Even those once loyal to her now looked away, unable to meet her eyes. The Queen's reign wasn't over, but it was broken, and William wasn't done. Not yet. Morning light spilled across the stone courtyard of Buckingham Palace, cool and pale, carrying with it the weight of a family undone. Inside Clarence's house, Camilla sat alone in a high-backed chair, her once perfect posture now slack, her hands resting limply in her lap. The gilded mirror across the room reflected a woman she didn't recognize, eyes ringed with exhaustion, mouth pressed thin, the pearls at her throat removed as if even they accused her. The sapphire necklace and the pearl bracelet were gone, taken back to the royal archive. All that remained was the echo of a power she'd wielded like a blade and lost in a single blow. Laura's room was empty. Her dresses, books, and sketch pads had been cleared from their shelves, leaving only bare walls and a folded note on the table. Camilla had read it twice, each time feeling the words cut deeper. "Mother, I can't stand in your shadow anymore. I need to find out who I am away from this." The paper still bore the smudges of Laura's tears. Camilla clutched it until it crumpled, yet the ache in her chest refused to fade. She had believed she was shaping Laura into a partner, an heir to her quiet revenge. Instead, she had pushed her daughter into flight. Charles visited only once after the council meeting. He didn't shout, he didn't curse. He simply stood at the doorway, his crownless silhouette framed by afternoon light, and spoke with a voice that sounded like gravel dragged across stone. "I defended you, Camilla. I believed you would steady this family. You've broken it instead." His eyes no longer held warmth. He turned and left without a backward glance, his footsteps fading down the hall like a verdict. He would not return. In the royal archives, the sapphire necklace rested on a velvet pillow, its blue stone catching the light in cool flashes. William stood over it, his hands behind his back, his reflection blurred in the polished glass. He didn't feel triumphant. The fight hadn't been about glory or vengeance. It had been about something smaller and heavier, a promise whispered to a photograph of his mother long before he'd ever acted. He pressed his palm against the glass, feeling the chill beneath his skin. "It's home now," he murmured, "where it belongs." The public erupted. Headlines screamed of betrayal, hashtags flooded the internet, and opinion pieces framed William as the guardian of Diana's legacy. Crowds gathered outside the palace gates, leaving flowers and cards addressed to the people's prince. But Behind closed doors, William avoided the camera. He sat with his children, read them stories, and tried to imagine the weight of a crown that demanded justice even when it tore the family apart. Camilla's confinement at Clarence House became the quietest exile the monarchy had ever seen. No cameras followed her drives, no invitations came to her luncheons. Her carefully curated life of teas, speeches, and polite applause dissolved into silence. She spent her evenings at the window, staring out at the gardens where she once posed for photographs, remembering the thrill of applause that would never return. The ambition that had burned so hot now left only ash. On a gray morning, heavy with drizzle, she stood before the mirror once more and swore she saw Diana's reflection looking back, smiling, serene, untouchable. Camilla reached out, her fingers trembling, but the image didn't vanish. She let out a low sound, half sob, half laugh, then lowered her hand and stepped back. Outside, London's fog began to lift, revealing a clear, bright sky. In the royal archives, the jewels stayed locked behind glass, silent witnesses to a victory that wasn't about punishment, but preservation. William walked past them one last time, his stride steady, his face unreadable, knowing the story was over, but the legacy would endure.